The Watson Firm. 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 Your personal injury lawyers.
Hey, it's attorney Aaron Watson with the Watson Firm. Hey, first of all, I want to say thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. I'm a trial lawyer here in Pensacola, Florida, licensed by the Florida Bar to handle personal injury cases and legal issues throughout the state of Florida. I've been practicing law for 17 years now. It doesn't feel like 17 years, but I've been able to help thousands of people. And so I'm hoping that our conversation today helps you in some way. Today, our topic is just about finding the right lawyer. Now, I always tell clients, I say, finding the right lawyer is like finding the right shoe. I'm sure every lawyer, every personal injury lawyer has dealt with this, where a client hires a lawyer and then says, you know what, the lawyer's just not the right fit. And sometimes they have to switch lawyers. And, when clients call my office to say, hey, I'm not happy with my current lawyer, we want to join the Watson Firm, I ask a series of questions. I'm always about trying to keep the relationship together if it can be maintained. But I do tell folks that if you're not comfortable with your lawyer, for me, I make sure that when I'm explaining complex legal issues, that I don't talk over my client's head. At the end of the day, I have a Juris Doctorate degree. I went through years of schooling to understand very complex areas of the law, and most clients have not done that. And so I want to make sure that when I'm explaining things to my client, that I'm not coming across as Dr. Watson. I want to come across as someone as if you're talking to a family member. And so as we're strategizing on your personal injury case, I want to make sure that you understand the strategy, you understand the risk, and you understand the potential reward going forward. But, in order to make sure that you feel comfortable with your lawyer, I think it's good to just find out who they are outside of the courtroom, who they are outside of the office. At the end of the day, I'm a husband. My wife's name is Kimberly. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. I've been married now, it's 13 going on 14 years. I met Kim in Atlanta while I was handling a case against Yamaha. I was there in a deposition and met her there. And, we had a love story and a long distance relationship because I was here in Pensacola. She was up in Atlanta, and we made it work. I'm a preacher's son, a proud preacher's son. I grew up in the church. I grew up with a Southern Baptist preacher, Pastor Larry Watson. He pastored the Inglewood Missionary Baptist Church here in Pensacola for a number of years. I was born in Buffalo, New York. A lot of people don't know that. We moved from Buffalo to Detroit, Michigan, probably at the age of 3 or 4 years old. My dad began to minister there in Detroit, Michigan. We moved from there to Mobile, Alabama. Our home was in Whistler, Alabama. My dad's church was in Pritchard, Alabama, near Viger High School. My dad pastored there for a period of years, and then we moved to Pensacola, Florida. And so I was in middle school when we moved to Pensacola, Florida. I attended Wedgwood Middle School, and then I graduated from Pine Forest High School. Go Eagles! And just always grew up in the church. And I say that there's something special about being a preacher's kid. Every Sunday, just as Dad would go around the church and shake hands and hug folks and talk to them about their week or their day, we would do the same thing as his kids, and I learned at an early age to empathize and communicate with folks no matter their walk of life, and have a sincere care for what they're going through. And so I bring that experience, say, for example, in church, I would pray for people, and we would minister through song and dance. In my law firm, I consider my law firm to be my ministry. Now, mind you, there's a lot of folks in my family who says, hey, Aaron, your dad's a pastor, your brother's a pastor, your mother's a preacher, your twin sister's a preacher. When are you going to preach? I get asked that all the time. And I say, hey, I do my preaching in the courtroom. And I believe that God showed me that my ministry is my law firm. I'm able to change lives, help people through justice and through guiding them through the courtroom and guiding them when they're in some of the most difficult times of their lives. At the end of the day, it's a common phrase that car accidents wreck lives, products liability cases, truck accidents, slip and falls. When you're hurt and it wasn't your fault and you can't work, it's going to cause a tremendous or have a tremendous impact in your life. And when bills start to pile up, and through no fault of your own, and something is kind of thrust up on you, and you didn't cause it and you didn't expect it, it can be very troublesome and worrying. And, to have someone by your side that you can call, you can text, you can email, who's been through this thousands of times to tell you, hey, it's going to be okay. And here's what you need to do to get better. And here's what we're going to do to make sure that we present the strongest case possible for you. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy being there for my clients when it's the toughest. I've sat alongside grieving mothers at the funerals of their loved one who was tragically taken away due to someone else's negligence. I've sat alongside my clients in the courtroom, and the jury comes back and announces the verdict, and it's a verdict that we wanted, and my clients cry, and we hug, and it's a very emotional experience because it's been a long time coming for a lot of folks who are hurt due to the negligence of someone else. It could be a medical malpractice case. It could be a workers' compensation case, a car accident where something has happened to you. You didn't cause it, but it has affected your life, and not only you, but your family. A lot of folks don't know that when a spouse is injured due to negligence, that if it's a wife, the husband has a potential loss of consortium claim. If it's a wife, the husband has that claim. And if it's a husband, the wife has that claim. It's called loss of consortium. If the children are impacted by an injury to their parent, they may have what's called a filial-consortium claim. And so, having a lawyer who is knowledgeable of the law, having a lawyer that you can relate with and understand is important. If a lawyer passed the bar exam, I'd say he or she is a smart lawyer. But that doesn't mean that they're the right lawyer. There's a difference between being smart and being right. You want to make sure that the lawyer is the right lawyer for you. He's the person or she's the person that you want telling your story in front of that jury. And what I always say when I'm talking to a jury is I talk to jurors like I'm talking to family. I don't want to talk over their head. I don't want to go in there and say, "Oh, members of the jurors, this case is about a negligence case involving some significant causation issues as it relates to my client's spine." I talk to folks as if I was talking to a family member because I want to make sure that the jury understands what the issues are in the case. I remember when I was in law school, walking around law school with my father. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I wasn't quite sure how I would finish law school without having another lawyer that I could call to show me how it's done. My dad said, "Aaron, pray, and you have my work ethic, and so if you work hard, the Bible says faith without works is dead," meaning you can pray all day, but if you don't also couple that with work, you can sabotage yourself. And so, I pride myself on my work ethic. I pride myself on my faith. I pride myself on my smarts. God has blessed me to be able to understand and see things from a different perspective that some other folks may not be able to see. But I worked my way through law school. I made it onto the trial team at Stetson College of Law. And for those of you who are not familiar with Stetson University College of Law, their trial advocacy program, at least as of today, and it has been, I graduated 17 years ago. It has consistently ranked number one in the country, number one in the United States of America for trial advocacy. If you want to be a trial lawyer, if you want to speak in the courtroom, that's the law school you go to. In fact, I think as of now, they're also ranked it's either number one or number three for legal research and writing. And think about that for a second. I mean, what do we want lawyers to be able to do when they're advocating for us, whether it be advocating for a settlement at mediation, advocating in front of a jury, or making arguments in front of the judge? You want your lawyer to be able to speak well. You want your lawyer to be able to write well and communicate well, both orally and in writing. And that's what stood out to me about Stetson College of Law. They're number one in the country for advocacy, speaking, oral argumentation, and then also number three for legal writing. So I mean, when you graduate from that school, you're going to have someone who's ready to communicate on your behalf, to advocate on your behalf, whether it be in drafting motions, briefs, or going to court or arguing in front of the judge. And so at that school, they have what's called a trial team. Just like when you go to college, I went to Florida State University to get my bachelor's degree. They would select, athletes to go and represent the school on the football team, and they go and compete against other teams throughout the country. Well, in law school, they pick what they deem to be the best trial advocates to go and actually try cases against other law schools. And I remember my first time trying out for the trial team. It just seemed like it was so prestigious to even be on the trial team. I tried out. I gave a closing argument in front of some professors and judges. Didn't make it. I then go and do a summer internship with one of my mentors, Willie Gary. And I remember asking Willie, do you mind if I give you a closing argument? I'm trying to get onto my law school trial team. I didn't make it the first time. And he said, come on, show me what you got. So I deliver a closing argument for him. And he said, you know what? Somebody in your family is a preacher. He said, whoever it is, he said, my brother's a preacher. Whoever it is, don't lose that righteous indignation. You've been hearing your dad preach your entire life. Bring that into the courtroom. And that's something that even today, I've learned that I don't just bring my Juris Doctorate degree into the courtroom or my law license into the courtroom. I bring my life experience into the courtroom. Being a preacher's son, being a father and a husband and a Christian lawyer, I bring it all to the courtroom because I want the jury to see, all aspects of me, and my clients to see all aspects of me as well. I think it's important. Another interesting fact about me is that my family, my dad grew up in a place called Scuba, Mississippi. Have you ever heard of that before? Scuba, Mississippi. I remember going there as a child, and my dad would drop me and my siblings off in Scuba from New York, and it was like going back in time. We'd go there. My grandfather had a small farm with farm animals, peach trees, collard greens growing. And, we'd spend the whole summer up there, and just live the simple life, building mud pies and picking fresh peaches off of the tree. But there's something about that experience, that just humbles you. I think about the fact every time I go into the courtroom that, no one in my family has done this before, that it is a privilege. It is an honor to be able to represent my client in the court of law, I think humbleness also allows you to be the best lawyer you can be and the best communicator you can be. Remember what I talked about is about having a lawyer who's not talking over your head. I count every client that comes into my door at my office as a blessing because they could have gone anywhere else. And so for them to read my bio and, after you watch this video, visit watsonfirm.com, read my bio, learn more about me. Another fun fact about me is I was the choir director at my church for a long period of time. And so I love music. I love to sing. And I love to write music. I've been, my mother's the musician, was a musician at my father's church. All of my family, we sing or we can participate in praise and worship in some way through music. And that's just how we grew up. But learn more about, your lawyer. Read their bio. Find out who they are outside of the office, outside of the courtroom, because that's going to tell you. I think it could tell you more information about that person than just, hey, he passed the bar exam. Because like I said, you want to make sure that your lawyer is the right fit for you. If you've been involved in a personal injury case, I invite you to visit our law firm website at watsonfirm.com. Certainly, if you have a potential case, we have a free case evaluation process where you call us. We'll ask you, hey, what happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? And then we'll go and do some research and let you know whether or not you have something that we can help you with. If we can't help you with it, we will certainly point you in the right direction as to someone who can potentially help you with your legal issue. I look forward to hearing from you. Again, I want to thank you for visiting our website. We handle cases throughout the state of Florida. We handle cases throughout the country. Whenever I take a case that's outside the state of Florida, I have partners in various states that I work with, So let's say, for example, if I have to go try a case in Texas, I'm going to go there with a Texas licensed lawyer and we work together to prosecute the case. There's no additional cost to my client. The attorney and I will then work to split the attorney's fee or come up with an arrangement on how we will split the attorney's fee to get paid. One other thing that folks ask me all the time, they say, well, Attorney Watson, you're accomplished, and it must cost an arm and a leg to hire a lawyer like you. And I remember my first year out of law school, and when I was just learning what the contingency fee arrangement is, I had seen lawyers get paid on what's called a retainer, where the lawyer will say, "Hey, I charge $2,000 up front and $300 an hour." With most personal injury lawyers, and especially at the Watson firm, we don't bill you on a retainer or a billable hour, and we work on what's called a contingency fee. What that means is that our fee, how we get paid, is contingent upon us winning your case. And so if you call my office today and I look at your case and say, "Hey, you know what? This is something that we can help them with," you won't get a bill. You won't get an invoice. I won't call you up here to swipe your credit card. We will take that case on. We will take that case all the way to trial if necessary. Try the case, and if we're not successful, all of our time, all the money that we spend in the case will be written off. You won't get a bill for it. We only get paid if you win. My attorney's fee is 33 1/3% of whatever is recovered. That fee is set by the Florida bar. If we have to sue somebody in the case, in some cases, the parties just can't get it resolved, the attorney's fee increases to 40%, and that fee is also set by the Florida bar. I share that with you because the Florida Bar is the organization that regulates lawyers throughout the state of Florida. So they set the attorney's fees. So let's say, for example, if I get involved in a case, if it's a truck accident case, we're able to get the case resolved without filing a lawsuit. The attorney's fee is 33 1/3%. And then whatever money we spent to get the case resolved will be reimbursed on top of the attorney's fee. That's how the contingency fee arrangement works. I share that with you because I take pride in being a straight shooter with my clients. I tell them all the time, whenever I'm explaining the positives in their case, even the negatives in their case, that I'm telling you not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear and what you hired me to hear. So that's why I'm not afraid of talking with you about the contingency fee agreement, what the percentages are, because that's something that you need to know up front, that you can hire a lawyer, that you can retain the Watson firm without any monies up front. If they're not successful in the case, and the reason that's important is because, you could very well say to yourself, well, I don't think I have a case. Nobody's going to help me in the case. But if you call our law firm and I see something in the case, or my attorney sees something in the case, you won't have to put in any money into that case. We will invest the money of hiring experts. I recall handling some premises liability cases where, there was something wrong with the flooring or the tile that caused my client to trip and fall. We have to hire experts to get involved and take a look at that to make sure that it's up to code. We pay all the money in that. We won't call you and say, "Hey, Miss Smith, I need $3,000 to hire an accident reconstructionist or $5,000 to hire an engineer." We will invest that time and that money and those resources into your case if we believe you have a case. So I think the best scenario is for you just to call. But make sure you call the lawyer that you feel comfortable with. Hopefully after this video today, I'm that lawyer, and that person that you may feel that, hey, you know what? He's who I want in the fight for me. He's who I want to advocate for me and to communicate on my behalf against the defendants in the case. If I am that lawyer and we believe you have a case, I look forward to representing you. I look forward to fighting for justice for you. Be sure to visit watsonfirm.com, where we demand justice.
The Watson Firm. 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 Your personal injury lawyers.